night at night. And then it was raining, so I'm like, be extra careful because I don't want to break something. For those who don't know me, I thought I would just do a little brief intro because I've been in the legislature. I finished my 3rd session, but my name is Celia Israel, and I am your voice at the Capitol for everything, not just for public ed, but for air quality issues, transportation issues, criminal justice stuff, all the array of things that we do every 2 years. So I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. Yeah, I always get an applause like that. El Pasoans love them, so El Paso. But I've only lived in Austin and El Paso. I came here to go to UT, so I'm a Longhorn who stuck around. I love Austin. I love the atmosphere in this region, and now I'm, a middle-aged woman who has a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
By way of just background on issues, you might know I'm really motivated by transportation issues around voting, making it easier and smarter and more efficient to vote. But I learned from day one, as soon as I was campaigning, that the number one issue for me would be votes that I would take supporting our public school kids, our teachers, and our parents who do what you do. So last legislative session, I've been using the word legacy a lot because, it's like, why do we do what we do? You hope that it has an impact and you're doing something significant. And I can honestly say that I will look back on the last legislative session and say I don't think it was like my end-all be-all legacy, but it was the beginning of something that I think I can really be proud of, just as a member of your community. We devoted $6.5 billion of general revenue to public education. It was a big, fat bundle of money. But I don't want to pat ourselves on the back and think, job well done, everybody go home. Because that wasn't dedicated revenue, that wasn't put into some sort of formula so that you and we can all depend on that amount of money or more every 2 years. The state will be there for us because it was a good economic year, and the Texans voted in historic numbers in 2018. Because you voted in historic numbers in 2018, you helped to reset the priorities at the legislature. If you remember the session before this one, we were fighting over really horrible things. Who gets to go into whose bathroom? We were literally talking about the bathroom police. That's not what I signed up for. And it's been really difficult to play smart defense after all these years. So it was very gratifying to have everybody vote in 2018, which recalibrated everything that we did in 2019. And everybody came in with a new attitude to say, okay, we get it, it's about public education. So I'm very grateful to all of you who helped get out the vote, because that's ultimately what mattered. So we have a new day and a new opportunity to not just accept what we just did as the platinum. It's the beginning. And in 2021, we all come back again. We're always up for re-election every 2 years, so I'll be on the ballot. I do want to serve again for another 2-year tour of duty, as they say. And I love it. I'm very gratified by it. I find that I'm well suited for it. I think you have to have a sense of humor to be in the Texas legislature. There are a number of issues for which, unfortunately, as you've seen in Washington, there is a cleaver through the heart of this nation right now. There's a lot of healing that has to happen. But there is one issue that sort of transcends politics, and that is public education. So there's a bunch of my Republican colleagues who were very, very interested in moving that rock forward, just as I was. So the political opportunity was there for us to join arms and push hard. So we want to keep it up. And in my goal in 2021 is that we have a renewed energy and a renewed commitment to take that revenue and put it into some sort of expected budget line item formula, so that you guys can bank on it and know we're at least going to get this much from the state. But you were not getting your fair share. We were not getting our fair share of state dollars. So we've got a lot of good things to build on. More impetus and more energy to reduce testing. I think that's always coming up every 2 years, so hopefully we're on a good trajectory for that. But I know you all asked me about your voice and how to be an effective voice. And do all of you know who your state representative is? Am I your state representative?
Yes. Not mine.
Who's your state representative?
No, sir.
I'm sorry?
Gina.
Okay, well, you got a good one too.
Yeah.
I think it's really impactful to me to meet my constituents at the Capitol. It just means something. To hear from, I mean, I represent a big chunk of Pflugerville, and to hear stories from across district lines of teachers who were having to get a second job, PTAs who are doing what you guys have to do to patch projects together, it means something. And the cool thing about Texas is that our districts are, we've got about 90,000 people in our districts. We are accountable every 2 years to you, and every 2 years we come back and say we want to do good things. This is a great opportunity for you to be engaged with us. So I would say, excuse me, don't wait until January of 2021 to re-engage. Do more of this kind of stuff. If you're having an event, invite us, invite your state delegation. Let us know what's happening in your school. Ask us for a donation every now and then. We have a little pot of money we can help you all with. We have social media where we can help escalate, but turn up the volume on something good that's happening in the school. These are limited areas is what I'm trying to say. The state is carved up into 150 districts, so let me know what's happening, let my staff know what's happening. And I will ask Taryn to raise your hand, because Taryn is my legislative director. I have a full-time staff. I'm part-time, essentially, but I have a full-time staff who makes me look good every day, right?
You did a great job.
We are, in terms of constituent services, I'll mention constituent services because what I want you to do is just build a relationship with your state rep, with our office, whoever that is, and your state senator. Constituent services means picking up the phone and responding to you. There are various people who get stuck in a situation at a state agency. It could be a teacher retirement situation. It could be toll road violations that got out of hand. We have had healthcare situations. I'll tell you, there was a story of a guy that I've never put his name to memory, but when we first got elected, he called our office, and his wife had recently passed away, and her car had accumulated fines from the toll road authority, and he was mourning the loss of his wife, so he didn't take care of that situation. Well, by the time he was ready to address it, the fines were over $20,000. The late fees. Thank goodness he thought to call our office. We called, got the late fees removed. I think he paid like a $2,000 fee that was originally owed. But if he hadn't have called us, he would still be working out a debt payment plan for stupid toll fines. So my big advice is just don't be a stranger. We're here to help. We work for you. There are full-time staff at the Capitol who are there. I promise they're there. And we want to meet you. We want to talk to you. So when you guys invited me here tonight, I was like, yeah, I want to go. We're politicians. We like people. We want to meet you. We want you to know that we're good and decent people. And we may not agree on everything, but I bet we agree on a lot. And we've got to get back to that point again in this country and in this state where we can agree to disagree for the sake of moving forward on really big and significant issues for our children and for our future economic vitality. So I think I'll leave it there and just kind of let some Q&A happen. Did I miss something that, am I missing something?
No, I think you did a great job of covering it. Do you guys have questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Like, once the session starts, like, when do I show up and where do I stand to let them know that I want the school funding?
Strength in numbers is what I always recommend.
Okay.
You don't have to go to Texas Legislature online and track 4 bills yourself. You can be on the list for Raise Your Hand Texas, who does, advocacy for public schools. Thank God for the Butt family. That's one of their big initiatives. And so there are fine nonprofits who believe in what you believe in, who have who do research and have staffs who can let you know, hey, there's a big hearing coming up, or there's a horrible bill that mandates more testing or whatever, So you can fire a note off to our office and say, hey, Celia, we read this thing, we really don't like this bill. My staff tracks every interaction that you have with our office so that when I go to the floor, and let's say a really bad bill somehow made it to the floor, which happens, I'll know that there was 10 parents from Davis Elementary who contacted us and said, this is a really bad bill. We track all of that information. So email us is always the best because your name doesn't get misspelled. Your contact information is just transferred into our database. And so I would just say find a couple of nonprofits that are doing advocacy that resonate with you, so that's the way to educate yourself. Education of your own self is really important. You don't want to fly blind.
Yeah. I was just going to add on to what you're saying. Davis has her very own advocacy group, and so you can start with us. And so reach out to us, and then we stay connected with ACPTA, which is the Austin Council of PTAs, and they have an advocacy group. And so everyone in Austin collectively is working toward this, and you'll meet lots of great people. We also do a lot of events with Raise Your Hand Texas. They're a great group, and so you can start with tying in with us, and then tell your friends, too, grandparents, neighbors. They can join the Davis PTA advocacy group too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody has a vested interest in a good and smart workforce and a clean future for us all.
We have a page, an advocacy page on the website, and we do have, like, Raise Your Hand Texas. I believe we have some links to those, but we'll update those. I actually ended up in a meeting with CPPP, the Center for, these are Benedictine nuns. It's the Center for Public Policy Priorities. Yes. So they started off as Benedictine nuns who were helping people in Texas in the 1880s, right? Am I right? And they decided that if they didn't understand Texas policy, and especially taxation policy, there would always be more need than they could meet. And so they became experts, and they're still experts. And the information that we got from them about school finance this week was incredible. I don't have the brain to explain it. What I learned, there's only like 10 or 11 people who fully understand it. I'm not one of them, but it was extraordinary to hear Texas used to be ahead. We were the first people to weight funding depending on, if you needed English language support or special needs or whatever. Texas used to lead in a lot of areas of education, and we can get there again. We vote for smart representatives, we can get there. I do have a question for you too. So we know that in other states they use 3 funding sources. They call it the 3-legged stool. Here in Texas, we don't have income tax, which is one leg of the stool that most states use it right, and now that's tied in knots and probably never going to happen. Do you foresee us or the legislature agreeing to additional funding sources for funding public education, or do you think they're going to just keep tinkering with the same funding sources and formulas? And I ask this because, for example, I've been asked this, what about the lottery? people are buying tickets, how does that fund education? Turns out that would fund 7 days
Yeah, it's not much.
of Texas education. And we think, I mean, it seems like it's going to be a lot because you see these big numbers, but it turns out it really is a very small piece of the pie. So do you think, I mean, do you see us pulling in other funding sources to help public education, or will that always be a struggle?
I think there's an opportunity, but it would probably have to be a whose ox is gored kind of thing. There's a lot of tax breaks that various special interests in Texas get for all kinds of reasons. Most importantly, I think we are an oil and gas rich state with about $11 billion in another fund called the Rainy Day Fund, which is, the real name for it is Economic Stabilization Fund. And every 2 years, it's ridiculous the level to which we act like it's a purse that unless Jesus comes down from heaven and tells us we can spend that money, we don't spend that money. We just keep socking it away. The problem is it's real good one-time use money. I think that leveraging those dollars for high interest yield, and then that high interest yield goes into an education fund, would be much more lucrative than lottery tickets, for example. And there are various special interests who want their little set aside. I'll give you an example, and Tara, maybe you might need you to refresh my memory, but we had a bill, for example, that would say, you know, back in the 70s, before the internet, retailers pay their sales tax by check. And as we became electronic, there was an incentive for the state to say, hey, if you go online and pay, you get a 2% discount. Well, why would that 2% discount doesn't make sense in this day and age. But those retailers still want their 2% discount. So that's just one example of perhaps hundreds of special interests who have a little thing that's their thing. And they don't want you to take away their thing. And they become quite comfortable with that. Even though they would agree, yeah, you're right, it doesn't make sense, but you promised us in 1970 we would have this, so we're not going to take it away. So I think there's always an opportunity for us to look at those kinds of things and dedicate them back into an education fund. That takes balance. We've been ruled by one party, and I firmly believe we need to hold each other accountable, the House and the Senate and the governor. But right now there has been no political accountability. The most accountability we've had is a tremendous turnout in 2018 that got a lot of people's attention. So the more balanced we are from a partisan perspective, the better off we're going to be, and the better off we'll be able to say, well, let's take that pocket of money and dedicate it to education, even though I know I'm going to hear it from the retailers or from whomever. These are not easy, but it can be done. But that's my.
Is that our best bet, you think?
It's a mishmash of things.
Okay. Is that our best bet?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. We're not going to be an income tax state. We've lived off of that quite nicely. But we are a state that's growing, and we're living ourselves to death. I mean, just look at the traffic coming into the school tonight. So there's all kinds of things that we need to address that growth, there's implications for that growth. And you guys are seeing it in your school district as well. Any other questions, comments, anything? Yes, sir.
I've seen some issues with the Robin Hood approach. Is it as unfair as it sounds, or have y'all discussed how fair that is for money to be collected here and sent somewhere else? Specifically, I've seen some issues with abuse, and wondered if that's going to be addressed.
Abuse of money?
Funds like water parks being put in schools, and just frivolous spending of stuff that's collected in metropolitan areas and sent somewhere else. I do understand that many other schools do need that money, but is that being put under the microscope?
I think the example that you're giving is a school district in South Texas that put in a water park, and they're taking our money. And you're like, really? Well, the folks who implemented that are no longer in office. So that's again incumbent upon all of us to be paying attention. I think it was, Far San Juan or Alamo or one of those. Excuse me. So there are political ramifications for being stupid with our money, and then there should be. You shouldn't be doing that with our limited resources. So there was a political price to pay for those people doing a water park in South Texas, and I don't think anybody was doing that then, because we talked about it all session.
So I've got a comment. My name's Catherine. I lead the fundraising here at Davis PTA. And one of the things that I learned in doing fundraising is when we look at the amount of money we raised here, it comes out to about $125 a student. And so for that amount of money, we provide reading specialists, math interventionists, science instruction, technology instruction, classroom supplies, funds for all the teachers. And we can do all of that with $125 a student. And when I think about looking at the statistics that we have nationally for how much Texas spends per student versus the national average might be around $12,000 a student, and Texas is around $8,000. So there's that $4,000 delta. And my comment just is to think about how much we can do for our kids in terms of support, how much they're missing out on with $4,000. If you look at how much we do with 100, imagine what 4,000 would do for us and for our teachers.
Yeah.
And so yes, I'm gratified that the pendulum stopped swinging and gutting public education. We're moving back, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. And so I think that we've got to keep marching onward and relentlessly pushing for more funding.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching. I was not in the legislature when we cut public school financing by over $5 billion. I can't imagine that we did that. We did that when we had money in the rainy day fund, and I remember so many of us going to the Capitol with umbrellas to say, "Hey, it's raining, it's raining." And the good news is we're in a better place politically when it comes to education. My colleagues who are from the other side of the aisle are hearing it from rooms like this too, and they're going around and talking and they're taking a victory lap on that money that they helped dedicate. But the difficulty is going to be, how do we keep it going? The state should be a 50-50 partner with the schools, and we have not been. We have been whistling through the graveyard, and we've been quite content to do that as a body. I have not been. But we have, again, back to 2021, as we get ready for 2021, you're going to have some new women and men to contend with, because it's going to be a presidential year and there's going to be like a ton of turnout. So get to know everybody. I would say zone in on your locals, because people like me and Hinojosa and Howard and Busey and Talarico. I suspect we'll have more people to work with, and we'll have a different set of people every 2 years. There's people who just say, I'm done, I'm out, and they, as one of my college professors used to say, where there's death, there's opportunity. So there's going to be new people for you to meet next November and December as we get ready for January, and new staffs. The education committee is going to be completely different. But I do believe that the chair of the Public Education Committee today would be saying what I'm saying, and that we have to put in some regular expectations for budgeting for our schools and our teachers to work on. Yes, ma'am.
What do you anticipate are going to be the main issues in 2021 for the legislature to deal with?
The only thing we have to do every 2 years is a budget. But you're hearing a word now about the census. And the reason the census is so important is because it's going to determine whether or not we get, it's an array of things. You guys understand. But by the weird timing thing is that we take the oath of office in January of 2021. we will not get those new maps, not new maps, new numbers from the Census Bureau until about March of 2021. So we'll be well into the business of committee assignments and transportation, criminal justice issues, all the things that we do. And the redistricting committee will then have to grapple with the new census numbers and say, okay, here it is. That map, the gerrymandering that you see happening, we can't have that anymore. It hurts my heart that there are people in my district that think, well, I'm a Republican, Senate doesn't want to hear from me. Well, that's wrong. But my district isn't the best example. But there are some districts that are really strongly Republican, strongly Democrat. They've been packed and gerrymandered, and it's wrong. One of the reasons it's wrong is because people think their vote doesn't matter. And they think, well, I don't want to go vote. It doesn't matter. I'm not from that party. And that's the worst thing that we could do for our country at any election. So I'm looking forward, although it's difficult to do redistricting because people from the same party are going to disagree and say, well, my mother's house is right there, and the map doesn't have my mother's house in it. And they're going to get angry. And there's going to be like silly stuff that's going to happen. But at the end, it's got to be a fair map. And my hope is that the House will represent, the House, in my mind, the House is where all the smart people are. So the House will represent a fair map that reflects the growth and the diversity of the great state of Texas. And we'll not have as much of that ugly gerrymandering as we do right now. The demographic trends are in our favor for equity and fairness. So the big issue is redistricting. And it's congressional lines as well as the lines for the Senate and the House. Invariably, it may end up in the courts, but I believe firmly that the House will get a map out there that reflects the true diversity of this state and the growth that we've been, 10 years. It's a lot. It's amazing to me how much we've grown in 10 years. I lose my bearings in downtown Austin now. I'm like, well, where there's a crane on every block. So redistricting is the big issue. I firmly believe also that environmental issues are going to be bigger because the planet is in a crisis, and the state of Texas should be leading the way on alternative sources of energy. Houston is the oil and gas, the energy capital of the planet Earth. It was hit by Hurricane Harvey. I'm on the Public Safety Committee, which is where all the gun legislation comes through. But it was also where the hurricane, the response to emergency legislation came through. Not one mention of climate change. If I had not brought it up, it would not have been brought up at all. So I think that's becoming a hot topic.
What can we do to force that issue? And what can we do to make one thing for industry to have some impact on issues like the environment, but what can we do? Well,
environmental topics are so, I'm not an environmental expert, but there's such an array of things that we can be doing. One of, I suppose I couldn't get into a public forum without saying the word transit, because that's my favorite topic in the world. I want more transit. I want better solutions to transportation. And if you're watching the news lately, we're looking at an election this coming November on a transit program, and Capital Metro is already buying electric buses. We can't keep doing things the way we've been doing things, basically. So transportation has a role to play. Environmental resources are limited, but I think the great state of Texas should be leading the way, and that comes with leadership and intent. And I'm hoping that the voters will help us be brave and say it's okay.
Just asking the question, as a voter, me asking you the question, does that influence how you think about the issues? And that if enough people are asking their representatives as they, run for office, if we're asking the questions, when you hear enough of the same question, does that make you think, oh, this is something we
Yeah,
gotta
maybe I should pay
bring?
attention. Yeah, I mean, I'm attuned to the issue just because I'm involved with with transit discussions in general, and I know that has been getting more and more attention. If you have friends around the state, they should be, you all should be tracking my social media, not because I'm, witty and bright. Sometimes I am. But because you might want to say, hey, look, Celia's going to be at the school, or she's going to be at this fair, or I didn't know that this was happening. I am your representative. This is another portal for you to communicate with our office. So I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook, and any of your friends that you say, hey, you should be paying attention to this. Your state, you can go to Google and enter your friend's address and say, your state representative is this person, or your state senator is this person. You should really pay attention to this person. Social media can be a force for good. It's not just a place to go and be nasty to one another. So it's a good way to educate yourselves.
And I know you're involved with Beto and some other folks who are doing, it's like the House Democratic, Flip the House organization.
Yes.
Am I catching that right?
Yeah, the official name is the House Democratic Campaign Committee. But there's a...
And that's to drive up votes in 2020.
Yeah, we are expecting a huge voter turnout in 2020. And I think there's a lot of good people who are putting their lives on a shelf and saying, oh, we're going to run for office. So, it's exciting. I mean, elections make me happy.
I was going to ask, what can we do to influence our state senators, Cornyn and Cruz? I've had instances where a bill was coming up and I was trying to call them and their phone lines were busy.
Yeah.
And then I saw them on the news saying, nobody's calling us. And it was a little infuriating.
Yeah.
What can we do to influence them?
I think the only thing that matters to them is, I don't want to get partisan with you guys. Elections do matter. And Texas has been voting dead last for years. And in 2018, it was not a presidential year, but we voted at near presidential levels. That got a lot of people's attention, back to my points about public ed. So the prediction is that voter turnout will be about 20% higher in 2020 than it was in 2018. Blowing my mind away, if we could do that. That's what gets our attention, and I wish that wasn't the case. And you're talking about your United States senators, not your state
Right.
senator. Your state senator is Kirk Watson.
Yes.
Texas is a big damn state. You got Mountain Time Zone. It's huge. And every state, whether you're Connecticut or Texas, only gets 2 senators. So it is more difficult in a state of this size and of this tradition to get the attention of these 2 men. But it's a statement on where politics is in America. We are not talking to one another across party lines, and we need to. There's a time for politics. There's a time for policy. And my hope is that you will all do your best to get everybody out to vote again in 2020. It's the essence of what makes us Americans. And I think you'll be proud on election night when you see your fellow Texans feeling the same way you do. We may not all agree, but when we show up in strong numbers, there's something heartwarming about that. And then we'll get ready for the next session, redistricting, new maps. It's going to be a new day. I'm very excited.
I have one super cool question. Who's the Dem running against Bill Flores?
I don't know. We'll look it up and I'll talk to you offline.
So I know there's a Dem that's going to run for the seat, so I'm going to help that person.
There's several.
Yeah, there's several. One's retiring, so.
Right, but I mean, and Pete Sessions might run. Pete Sessions might run for that seat. Okay, well, whoever, it doesn't matter who the R is. We need to know who the other guy is.
Got it.
If you could help us.
Got it. I'll talk to you offline because there's several.
Okay.
How do you feel about the 10% of high school graduates getting admitted the state locked into that. I think it's a good idea.
I'm sorry,
If you're in the top 10% of your high school graduating class,
yeah,
I think it might be 9% now, but you're entitled to admission to any state university.
yeah,
Some state universities, it's not that big a deal,
yeah,
but UT really is not particularly happy with it. And a lot of urban areas and especially suburban areas aren't very happy with it. I think it's a good idea.
yeah,
I think it's Texas's way out of getting diversity in the colleges.
yeah.
Get the
But-
top 10% in a
The,
Valley School, they get in the top 10%, and Westlake get in.
yeah.
But Westlake thinks they need more.
Well, I want to hold our institutions of higher education accountable to diversity. It's really important. I went to UT, and as a Latina from El Paso, it was a little overwhelming. But, and I would say I love that university a lot more after I graduated, because it was like really hard for me. But it was, I think diversity is a good thing. And unfortunately, some of us have said diversity is a bad thing. It's a good thing. So if it's a tool for diversity, I like it. I have no problems with it.
The rural Republican representatives like it.
Mm-hmm.
They're on board with this.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those issues I think is good. It's Bush, I think it was Governor Bush, and
Yeah.
came up with that idea.
Yeah. The strongest power the governor of Texas has is his ability to appoint people to boards and commissions. And the governor of Texas is not the king or the queen of Texas, but they can appoint people to oversee these state agencies, and they appoint those who run the UT and A&M system and the Texas State University system. They dictate who's going to run those systems. They can dictate, are we going to do an extra initiative on diversity? So it means a lot when you have quality people at these levels to lead these universities. You let the dogs out. All right.
All right, are there any more questions?
I'm just gonna say, if anybody is not registered to vote, I can do it for you tonight.
All right.
I'll be back there.
Yeah, and we also, and so there's also flyers going around that gives you information on how you can find your representatives. It's a piece of paper, you can write it down and save it for the legislative session.
I brought some extra calendars if anybody wants really pretty calendars of the cathedral that we call the state capitol. Come and visit us. Thank you for everything that you're doing. This is the essence of what makes our community awesome. So thank you all very much.